Yeshua, Hefo Haiti, Hefo Haiti, Imlo Hailiotka, Yeshua, Koma Shatobi, Koma Shatobi, Hurakbis Hutcha, Yeshua, Hefo Haiti, Hefo Haiti, Imlo Hailiotka, Yeshua, Koma Shatobi, Koma Shatobi, Hurakbis Hutcha. Welcome to Hebrew Perspectives. So glad that you are here. Those of you that are watching YouTube, it looks like it's working. Facebook shows live but black. So I'm not sure what's going on with the Facebook. I wonder if I dare reload the page. I'm not sure why there's not a picture. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a chance and reload it and see, and then hit the start button, and it says that I'm still going.
Yes, it's live.
It's reconnecting. I would just love, you know what? I do not have my glasses. I took them off and put them somewhere. And so my lovely assistant is going to look for them for me. Everyone should have a lovely assistant. Or yes, if you're a female, have a handsome assistant. And if you're not handsome, at least let them find you handy.
That's right.
All right, so yeah. Well, maybe somebody will. I'm not sure.
Sorry, just go.
All right, so we've got, again, welcome to Hebrew Perspectives, and I'm so glad that you are here with me, and I'm glad to be here with you for our midrash, our study, and just a reminder about what it is that we do here. We follow the same reading pattern that the Messiah and his disciples, his Talmudim. Talmudim is a word for students. Talmud means learning, so students learning students. And so what we have is it's the same pattern that's been read since the days of Moses. And you can find this in the description of the YouTube and also on the Facebook page. And but the same readings are done every year. And of course, there is so much content that you can't ever get to it. So I try to do things a little bit different each time when we go through these, bringing out new and different insights. Because God is always revealing something new and something wonderful that we haven't seen before. And so let me see here. There we go. Now I can see. All right, so this week's Torah portion is Chukat, and we're talking about living water. So for those of you that for those of you that do not know, and it's not uncommon for people to
It's best you just put the video on.
it's not uncommon for people to not know what Torah is. I was talking with somebody. Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. The word Torah means instruction. You'll find that word in the Hebrew throughout the Hebrew Bible. Often it's translated as law. But basically what it's talking about is it's talking about the first 5 books of the Bible, known as the Torah. And so I had somebody ask me, what do you read? And I read the same book as you do, only I dive into the Hebrew so that I know what the true meaning of the word is. And something interesting about intellect. Most of us and most of the listeners and people that watch are from the West. And the West is very intellectual. A lot of smart people in the West. I'm not saying that there aren't smart people all over the world. There are. But the phrase that comes to mind is that I think I told my grandchildren this morning they're a bunch of know-it-alls. That's how we're raising them to be smart and to know everything. Anyway, but today is the Torah portion is Chukat, and we're talking about living water. And so before we get too far into what we're doing here, let's remember to say the blessing. And oh yes, it is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Lord our God, sweeten the words of Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our offspring and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us, know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Lord, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. Blessed are you, Adonai, King of the universe, who selected us from all the peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. As the blessing says, may Torah study always be sweet to you. All right, so here we go. So I thought I would start with something from, well, if you have your Chumash, and I would suggest that you have a Chumash. You can get a Chumash from Art Scroll, and this is what a Chumash looks like. It's kind of hard to see. The lighting's not very good at all. But if you go to Art Scroll, you can get a English Hebrew Chumash. Matter of fact, I can provide a link to anybody that wants one. And this is something that basically it's the Torah. It's the first 5 books, and it has it in the Hebrew and it has it in the commentary. And there's something interesting here that I was listening to another rabbi earlier this week, and another one of those things where people were asking the question, what do you read? And somebody was saying to this rabbi, saying that no, they didn't speak Hebrew back then; they only spoke Aramaic. And so, what's kind of funny here is that you pull up your Chumash of the Hebrew here. You see that Hebrew is in the bold and the big part. Well, then look at, you see over there on the other side. I'm having trouble with the little reverse thing here, but you see the other language to the right, to the other side, it looks like Hebrew as well, but that's Aramaic. Now, it's interesting. What's interesting about that is that it's a sister language, so they're pretty much the same almost. And it was translated by a convert to Judaism named Onkelos. And so was Aramaic spoken? Sure. So was Hebrew. Hebrew was spoken in the synagogue, in the temple. It was a part of the daily life. Prayers were said in Hebrew on a regular basis. Now, I even had somebody tell me recently, they were like, no, they only spoke Greek. Greek is Hebrew. I'm like, what? That's just like pure cognitive dissonance. For me to tell somebody, that Hebrew is a totally separate language from Greek. It's like, no, it's not. Okay, all right. What can I say? What can you do for people that, they don't want to know? What's interesting is that I did a post this week about wisdom on Facebook, and wisdom from the Hebrew perspective is not like people think in what I was talking about with Western culture. Wisdom it's not just information. It's not just gathering intellect. It's not intellect, but it's not just gathering insights and things like it. It's a whole lot more to it. It's a deep desire to. It's basically like presenting your soul and your mind and your heart and everything to the Torah as like an open hand, like you're ready to receive. And so many people in the West feel like they know it all. And so to bring wisdom, and King Solomon actually equates wisdom with Torah. And if you look throughout all rabbinic literature, you'll notice that wisdom and Torah are synonymous with each other. So to have the Torah in your life is to have wisdom. And those that reject Torah, well, even Solomon says if you reject the Torah, even your prayer is an abomination. That's a little sobering. Truth hits hard sometimes. And sometimes we have to speak that truth. So for people to deny it and set it to the side, be careful. That's so true wisdom is basically having an open heart to receive the Torah, to receive what God wants for us. Now, let's start with, so we were reading here. So the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, this is the decree of the Torah, which Hashem has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and they shall take to you a completely red cow, which is without blemish, and upon which a yoke has not come. And then it begins to go on and say what it is that you do with this this red cow, this red heifer. If I wanted just tons and tons of hits on this particular video here today, I could have just put in, something about the red heifer, and we would have been a whole lot more people tuning in. Why is that? It's because people look at Israel and they look at the things that are going on, and they look at Judaism and they see these things, and they're longing for the restoration of the temple and all of these things, and they want it so much, and they're equating it to end times, and this is things that are exciting. This is what makes people really. But again, what we're really supposed to be doing is working on our character development, making sure that we remain in covenant with God, and all of these things. That is the important part. Bringing others under the wings of the Shekinah and showing them how to refine their character and to help them, help people to learn how to study Torah. And so that is what it is. Now, parasha Chukat is, the root of that word is huk, and basically what it deals with, and especially with the red cow, it has to do with laws of kosher and things like that, and they are laws that are given, statutes that are given, that we don't know why. we don't know how it is that a red cow, you know, took away the sins of Israel, and the whole death of one thing. But the point is that, and there's one of the reasons rabbis talk about why it was a red heifer is because of the sin of the golden calf. So now you have the mistake being rectified with something that looks like the mistake. So it's interesting. It's funny how God does those things. So I thought I would bring something from Rabbi Shmuel Reichman in his book From the Journey to the Ultimate Self about parasha Chukat. And remember, I led with talking about how intellectual you are and what the West is. So we're going to talk some more about this. So let me start with a story. It was that time of year again. Once a year, for a single day, the legendary Buddhist guru would emerge from his solitary meditation to greet the public. Thousands of people would flock to his far-flung residence to greet him. Some came to ask questions, seeking his wisdom and advice, while others came to just lay eyes on him, on this legendary figure. The moment had finally come, and a hush fell over the crowd. The guru slowly emerged, and the crowd immediately swarmed toward him. Those in front began reaching out to him, and one by one he began addressing their questions. The aura of reverence was suddenly broken by a commotion in the back of the crowd. An older woman began pushing her way through the crowd, trying to make her way to the front. Everyone began muttering, wondering why she was so desperate to meet the guru. She must have a very deep philosophical question. What was she looking for? Was she looking for the path toward peace and truth? Was she wondering how to find her unique mission in life? When she finally reached the front, she grabbed onto the guru's arm. Moishi, she chided him. Enough of this foolishness. It's time to come home and get a job. Very often, people believe that the true depth of wisdom lies only in far-off places. You've heard these stories. You've heard about people going off and secluding themselves. That people do to put themselves in a monastery and they don't talk to anybody, eat bread and water. What kind of life is that? That's actually, you're robbing yourself of the pleasures that God has provided you. There has to be a certain amount of balance in life. So people, you hear about all the time, going and seeking Eastern philosophy or Eastern spirituality, or going off and looking for Western philosophy. I'll tell you right now, there are more psychologists and psychiatrists on this side of the world, on the Western side, than there are anywhere else. But Rabbi Weichman says, however, the deepest wisdom lies within Jewish thought. That's why we bring you the Hebrew perspective, folks. In the depths of the Torah's inner wisdom. Oh, there's inner wisdom to what we know as wisdom. Ooh, that's okay. So let me stop right here. There are so many people, when they look at wisdom, for one, they have the wrong definition of it. And then when you're looking at it, not realizing it goes even deeper. There's so much more to it that we do not even realize, that we cannot conceptualize. Does this mean that we can't trudge into its inner depths? Of course we can. But he says here, Rabbi Reichman says, one must only seek and they will find. Oh, wow. Now, does that sound familiar or what? Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be open to you. What do you think that the Messiah was talking about? He was talking about, often as anybody else did, before him, John, 48 other prophets, talking about the kingdom of heaven. What is the kingdom of heaven? It's the Torah. Return to Torah. Seek the Torah. Knock and it shall be opened. Seek and ye shall find. The Torah is wisdom. All right, so let's talk about what the purpose of hukim. This is the plural for huk. And so Rabbi Weichman says, the power and purpose of intellect is an oft misunderstood concept in the Western world, making parashat Chukat all the more important to study. Parashat Chukat introduces us to the paradigmatic chok, the mitzvah, this is commandment, mitzvah is the word for commandment, of the para aduma. Para aduma means the red heifer. You'll notice that the word aduma is similar, has the root Adam, as in man. Man was created from the dirt, red dirt, from clay, molded from clay. So this is where you get these ideas from this. This is why it's so interesting to dig into the Hebrew of things. A chok is commonly understood in contrast to a mishpat. Now, not too long ago, we did the Torah portion of mishpatim, which is judgment or judgments. Mishpatim is plural for judgments. A mishpat is a rational, intuitive Torah law, such as prohibitions against murder and stealing, and the command to give charity. So these make sense to us, right? We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to steal anything from anybody. And we want to take care of people. We do. Now, such laws appeal to the human intellect and appeal to the innate moral compass present within all human beings, irrespective of religion, race, or ethnicity. All right, so it's deep down within us that we want to help folks. Yeah, I see just pardon the interruption, but basically, I've got somebody asking a question on Facebook, but and so I'm answering my little Jewish mother-in-law, so I want her to be able to go and watch. Pardon the. There we go. Okay, so apparently she says that there was no picture and no sound right after the singing. So at least somebody got to hear me sing. All right, so what I was saying is that, you know, deep down inside of us, we have this desire to do good.
Right.
And technically through narcissism and selfishness, people override these things. It seems to be a problem that we have today. Now, a chok, on the other hand, refers to a Torah law that seemingly defies human logic and rational explanation, such as para aduma, or the laws of kashrut. These are the Jewish dietary laws. Or the sha'anez, that's the prohibition against mixing wool and linen. And people look at that and it's like, what? You know, and so it's like when I tell somebody that I'm following the commandments, they're like, oh, so you don't mix wool and linen? No. It's not hard. I don't know why. It's a commandment. We're not going to mix wool and linen. You know, I mean, you realize that Levi jeans were made just so that basically it was not a mixing. You know, they're just like, let's create this denim. Anyway, but we've got ideas, but as to why certain things but are they the right ideas? We don't know that for sure. All we know is that it's a commandment. So let's continue with what Rabbi Reichman is talking about here. So he's saying if there's no logical explanation for these commandments, for these mitzvot, what is their purpose? What is the purpose of these commandments? And another question would be, and again, this is what we do. We ask questions. Why would God command us to do something for seemingly no justifiable reason? Let me give the idea of basically saying that a foundation of obedience need to be laid. And this is where many believers today are struggling with their walk with God is they do not have a foundation of obedience. Doing something that God requires us to do, even though we do not know why, builds a foundation and provides a better lifestyle toward character development. Now, Rabbi Weichman says, one possibility is that this type of command engenders obedience and submission to God's will. Well, that's kind of what I just said, isn't it? Well, what is God's will? If you ever heard people talking about, well, what's the will of God for my life? It's the Torah. That you can read through all kinds of ancient literature, and you'll find that the will of God is the Torah. The Torah is the will of God. You want to know what it is for your life? What do people think of when they think of Torah? Commandments. Follow the commandments. It's the will of God for your life. People are always worried about the little avenue. Should I go here? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Let God lead you by just following the commandments, because you are connecting with him. Again, for those of you that are new, the word mitzvah, commandment, means to connect. So you are in your physical form. When you're obeying a commandment, you are connecting with God. Right. Is there a higher realm of this? Of course. When you're praying to God, you are entering the world of spirituality, but in essence, you are still doing something that's physical, right? But is that all that we do, is just pray? That's the majority of believers in the world today would have you just believe that. That's all you have to do, is just believe that he is, and then let's just go from there and do whatever we want. Now, I know that sounds kind of like, well, we don't really do whatever we want. We don't kill and, oh, wait a minute. You're okay with the judgment ones. But let's go back to the chok. You don't want to follow those. Those are the very foundation. You can't have one and not the other. You have to have it all. This is why many people have that misunderstanding of, oh, if you break one commandment, you break them all. Well, that's true. But thankfully, we have something called teshuvah. We can return to following God's commandments at any time. How do people, the definition of sin is lawlessness. You do not connect with God through commandments. What happens? You become lawless. You start doing whatever you want. And oh boy, I've run into some people here lately they're doing whatever they want. And the thing is unfortunately, many people, it has come down to, that's the way they've been taught. They've been taught that. Somebody was telling me something recently, and I forget the exact subject, but it was like, and I'm like, well, where did you get this information? And they were like, from the internet. So, well, I can go to the internet and I can find the exact opposite information. So what's true? Well, let's just go to the Torah. Let's just go to vetted sources like the Talmud. Over 4,000 years of vetted wisdom. Oh, what's their wisdom? Well, it's connected with the Torah. It's describing things that are in the Torah. And so many people are wanting to throw that out. What was it? I was helping somebody with something with pronunciation with Hebrew. And then so I typed out the word and I put in the vowel markers to help them so that they could understand. And immediately they attacked me and said that was of the devil, basically, that those vowel marks had been added to the original Hebrew. And I was like, what? Where are you learning this stuff? Basically, so as a little side note, here's how it happens. Basically, the Torah, the same people that gave us the books of the Bible that decided which ones were in there, the same people decided, well, let's put in these vowel markers to help people to understand how to say the words. And the main reason why was because the Torah is sung. And so that means it has cantillation marks. so people know how to sing the Torah. How can that be evil? Who taught that this was evil? Well, it starts with the church fathers, and the whole anti-Semitic part of it. And that anti-Semitism has bled into the believing world today, and believing that anything that, you mentioned anything about Judaism, and next thing you know, it's like those people are the devil. That's just pure anti-Semitism. I'm sorry. That's a fact. That's a fact. All right. So I've gotten off track here, but I needed to say that. These things were in the back of my mind, and I knew that I was going to talk about them today. This just became the point where I could fit it in. Now, so what were we talking about? Oh, God's will.
Right.
That's what we were talking about. So a life of truth. Everyone is seeking the truth. The Messiah is the truth, right? Everyone is seeking the truth. The truth is aligned with a higher will, right? What is the higher will? It's God's will. So Rabbi Weichman says, such a life requires commitment and discipline. An effective way to discipline oneself is by obeying laws, regardless of whether one understands them. Now, here in America, we have a lot of laws. Many laws we follow, and we don't even realize we're following them. This is the same thing with the Torah. Many laws that people say that we don't have to follow those laws anymore are being followed on a regular basis. So again, if you logically think and you ask questions critically, you realize that these things are happening. So here's where the trouble lies in. The trouble is comprehension. All right. So comprehension and understanding are valuable, but chukim are necessary to create a firm structure of pure obedience to God's will. All right. We cannot emphasize this enough. He goes on, he says, however, it is possible that while chukim do not appear to have any rational or logical explanation, this is true only from the viewpoint of human logic and reason. In other words, there is, in fact, a reason for chukim, but these reasons transcend human logic, residing in a realm far beyond our intellectual capabilities. Within this line of thinking, it is possible that while our human intellects cannot grasp the entirety of a chuk's meaning and depth, we can access shards of its meaning. A clear expression of this is the fact that many commentators have attempted to provide explanations for chukim, despite their supposed incomprehensibility. This suggests that at least a partially comprehensible aspect to chukim, despite their elusive and transcendent nature. So we don't know why we're not supposed to eat pork. Why we're supposed to, what we can eat things and what we cannot eat things. What's interesting is that of the foods that we can eat are super, super abundant.
Right.
But the ones that we're not allowed to eat, not as abundant. Unless you live in Iowa, there's pork everywhere. It's the largest pork producing state. But so you'll run into a conversation and people will say, oh, well, God didn't want us eating pork because it's not good for us. Well, there's a lot of things that aren't good for us. Not even realizing that Coca-Cola, well, guess what? It's kosher. And it's not good for you.
That's true.
Guess what? A Twinkie, that's kosher.
Right.
But it's not good for you.
Right.
All right? So we're missing the point on these things. God has given us something that we don't understand why. He's building a foundation for us to grow from there. All right? So he goes on here and he says, are you awake right now? How do you know that you are not dreaming right now? When you are dreaming, do you not believe that you are awake? Why else would you feel so relieved upon waking from a nightmare, or so disappointed when we wake up from a fantastic dream? If the nightmare was clearly illusory, why do we breathe such a sigh of relief when we awake and realize it was just a dream? Why do we wish we can go right back to that splendid dream? It is because they seem objectively real. If so, how do you know you are not dreaming right now? How do you know with absolute certainty that you are awake? You know this because you experience it in the depths of your very self with the power of experiential knowledge. There is no rational way to prove that you are currently awake. Now, if that doesn't blow your mind a little bit, it's like, oh man, what are you on, dude? It's the truth. Think about it. All right. So let me finish with Rabbi Weichman with this, then we'll move on to something else. I usually rely on we're 40 minutes in. All right. Free will, love, beauty, and spirituality. All right. So if we didn't have these kind of laws, we wouldn't have free will. All right. So let's say. So this is the secret behind free will. Rationally and scientifically, the claim of free will is difficult to justify. Based on determinism, modern brain scans, and scientific evidence, decisions appear to be merely mechanical. The cause of anyone's actions is simply a response to all the incoming stimuli. However, you know that you have free will. You feel the tug and pull every time you face an inner spiritual battle. You feel the pain and regret that comes with failure and the joy and pride that comes with victory. But will, the Hebrew word for will is ratzon, transcends logic, a principle that the scientific mind or machine can never comprehend. You see those science fiction movies all the time about, trying to give a robot, a machine basically to act human. It's impossible, right? But okay, so here we go. So this is also the secret behind the concepts of love, beauty, and spirituality. There is no rational explanation behind the experience of love. Science can attest to the chemical and biological components of that connection, but the existential, spiritual, and conscious expanding elements transcend intellect and reason. It's interesting because you can put somebody into an MRI, you can MRI their brain, and you can do certain stimuli, and they'll see certain parts of the brain light up depending on what it is, anger. It's an amazing scientific thing. The same is true of beauty. What exactly makes something beautiful? Science cannot measure beauty, as there is no one thing that makes something beautiful. Beauty transcends the sum of its parts. It is when contrasting parts melt together into a harmonious oneness that beauty emanates. Spirituality as well transcends reason. Science cannot measure anything other than that which is physical and quantifiable. That which is transcendent and experiential is deemed non-existent, as it lies in a realm beyond the capacity of physical tools. So you see, this is why many people have trouble with, is there a God at all? The whole spiritual aspect of it. Before we did the broadcast here, I was talking to my wife about how basically atheists, they're a religion of their own, they won't admit to it, but they study the Bible to disprove it. And they claim a man, Moses, has a vision at a burning bush and creates a whole religion. But the point is, the thing is here is that it's ratified and seen by 3 million at the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Not just one man having a vision. Now it's 3 million having an encounter with the one true God. How can 3 million people or more be that delusional? It's not possible. It's just not possible. But you'll notice that the Satan, cursed be he, is an imitator. And you'll see that people after that fact figures, people in history, you'll know who they are. They had a single encounter, a vision, a delusion, and created whole new religions. There's many of them out there, and many of you know who I'm talking about. So let's go to Matthew chapter 21, and I'm in the Hebrew Gospels. Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21. Oh, how did I get on Mark? There we go. Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21 is where the Messiah enters into Jerusalem, and he, tells them to go get the colt, and tell them if they ask about it, he has need of it, and so it's here comes your king riding in on the foal of a donkey. All right, and then there's references to it in Isaiah 62:11 and Zechariah 9:9, and then in Psalms 118:26 in the Hallel, there's reference to them calling out and saying, "This is Hosanna, son of David," and then it ends up walking into basically he comes in, they're laying down their palm branches and shouting Hosanna, and then he comes to the temple. Let's go ahead and start with verse number 12. Yeshua entered the temple of God and drove out from there all the merchants and customers in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the booths of those selling doves. He said to them, "See, it is written, my house," where he's referring to where it's written is talking about in Isaiah 56:7. "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it into a cave of robbers." The blind and the lame approached him in the temple, and he healed them. There's also another reference to this in Jeremiah 7:11. When the leading priests and scholars saw the wonders he performed and the children crying out to the temple and saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they became angry. One question you would have to ask right here is, why did the priests, the Roman bought priests, why did they get upset at this point? Is because he upset the apple cart. One thing that people don't realize is the Sadducees, they loved being Roman. They loved Hellenistic culture, and they did their duty. They did their priestly duties, but they were at odds with the Pharisees. Leading up to this particular event, there's a portion in there where they're supposed to pour the libation at the Feast of Sukkot. The libation of water, they're supposed to pour it onto the altar, but they purposely spill it on the ground because the Pharisees pointed out that the Torah commands that it be put on. And so, in other words, the two were at odds with each other. In other words, the Sadducees looked at it, the Torah, literally, and the Pharisees saw what needed to be done, but so they were at odds with each other. Now, so when the leading priests and scholars saw this, he performed, the children crying out in the temple saying, "Hosanna," okay, all right. They said to him, "Do you hear what they are saying?" This is the important part here. This is where you start after asking questions. Excuse me, sir, you just came in here, you've upset the apple cart. Do you hear what they are saying? I like his response. And he said to them, "I hear it. I hear it." And then he says, he's going to bring them the word of God only right to them and talk to them about it. And he says, have you never read, from the mouths of children and nursing infants, you have founded strength? Okay. All right. So are you curious? Well, yeah. I'm curious. So this led me to pull out my Billerbeck and Strack Talmud inquiries. Remember how thick this book is? This thing's huge. All right. Now I got a little red tab highlighted here. And we are going to, so basically from the mouth, one translation says, from the mouth of the underage and infants, you have prepared praise for yourself. Now, the first reference to this is Psalm 8 and 3 in rabbinic literature, and there's a lot of commentary on it. From the mouth of children and infants, you have established praise. That's Psalms 8:3. Have you not read? Okay. They asked him a question, and he said, do you hear what they're saying? He's like, yeah, I hear it. Now, have you never read? I mean, think about this is the kind of banter that went back and forth between Pharisees and Sadducees, and even among themselves, because there were 7 different sects of Pharisees. They didn't all agree. And so, just like, so you have basically from the mouth of children who are in the womb, Job 3:16. Or I would not be like a buried abortion, like children who never saw the light. Infants are those who suck at their mother's breast. Joel 2:16. Gather the children and those who suck at the breast. Now, one rabbi says here, it doesn't say who the rabbi is. It says, children are the children in the alley. You can see Jeremiah 9:20. To wipe out the child from the alley, you can look at Lamentations 4 and 4. So there's many references, and I can't read them all. It's this thick on this page, all right? That's how many references there are talking about children and infants. All right, so here's what I wanted to get to. When the Israelites stood before Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, God said to them, should I give you the Torah for free? Rather, bring me good guarantors so that you will observe it, and I will give it to you. They said, Lord of the world, our fathers shall be guarantors for us. He answered, your fathers themselves need guarantors. With what can this be compared? With someone who went to get a loan from the king. The king said to him, bring me a guarantor, and I will give you the loan. That man went and brought him a guarantor. The king said to him, your guarantor himself needs a guarantor. He went and brought a second guarantor. The king said, your guarantor needs a guarantor. When he brought him a third guarantor, he said, know that I will give you the loan because of this one. So God said to the Israelites, when they stood there to receive the Torah, I will give you my Torah, bring me good guarantors, so that you will observe it, and I will give it to you. He wanted to guarantee that we were going to keep it. This was more than just, this was a commitment. They said, our fathers shall be our guarantors for us. God answered, I have something against your fathers. Against Abraham I have said that he said, how shall I know that I will take possession of it? In Genesis 15 and 8. Against Isaac I have loved Esau, whereas I hated him. See Malachi 1 and 3. And Esau I hated. You know, what's interesting is that in this Torah portion also speaks about how they went through Edom, and Edom treated them bad and wouldn't help them. Everywhere you look in rabbinic literature, Edom is compared to Rome. All right, and then what's interesting is that when the Messiah comes, where will the Messiah be? In Talmudic literature, it says the Messiah will be at the gates of Rome. Doesn't mean he's going to be Roman. It means that he's still, to the very end, trying to save Esau. Yes. Still to the very end, trying to pull at Esau and bring him back. So why did God have them go near Edom on their journey? Still wants to save Esau. That idolatrous pagan follower, Esau. And there's so many of them today, so many of them. And Esau I hated, and against Jacob I have that he said, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right passes by my God. Isaiah 40:27. Yet bring me good guarantors, and I will give it to you. They said, Lord of the world, our prophets shall be guarantors for us. He answered, I have something against them. See Jeremiah 2:8. The shepherds sinned against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal. See Ezekiel 13:4. A study of Ezekiel is fantastic. If you ever want to just take some time and just dig for a while, I'm going to do it soon, the Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'm going to do some more studying into Ezekiel and hope to bring some of this out. Ezekiel's just fantastic. Like foxes in the ruins, your prophets have become. Rather, bring me good guarantors, and I will give it to you. They said, behold, our children shall be guarantors for us. God answered, truly, these are good guarantors. For their sake, I will give you the Torah. This is what, from the mouth of children and infants, you establish power for yourself. Psalms 8:3. So now the Midrash means, and power means nothing other than the Torah. Psalms 29:11 says God will give his people power. This is the Torah. In the sense of Midrash, in teaching the Torah, you'll gain power. If now the debtor is required to pay back and he has nothing to pay with, who is seized? It is not the guarantor. From this, we should understand the following. You have forgotten the Torah of your God, so I too will forget your children. Hosea 4:6. Again, very, very sobering. Why would we forsake the Torah? If anything, for one, when you start following Torah, it isn't long before you realize you're doing it for the sake of Torah. Okay, that's what it's all about. But if you think about it, do it for your children. Do it for your children. Now, again, I've spent a lot of time here today, 56 minutes so far, and I haven't even gotten to the living water part. So quickly, Miriam passes. Miriam passes, and what happens with Miriam is that the well, the rock that had been following them in the wilderness. Funny thing about Paul talks in Corinthians about the rock that followed them in the wilderness. And it's interesting that many people, Paul uses the Talmud, and yet there's people that are like, no, you got to throw out the Talmud. So it is just, but anyway, but he is right because it's the Talmud. That rock that followed them in the wilderness, it was known as Miriam's well, and it followed them in the merit of Miriam. Why? Because she's the one that pulled Moses out of the water. Well, she wasn't the one that pulled Moses out of the water, but she was the one that protected him while he was in the water. She's the one that found Batya, said, hey, I've got a nurse. You know the story. All right. So that is why the well is in her merit. That's why that's why we had the well in the wilderness. Now we had the cloud because of Aaron, through the merit of Aaron. And we had the manna through the merit of Moses. So you see how these things work. Now, that well, throughout all of rabbinic literature, is known as living water. And you know what? Again, when we look at rabbinic literature, there's many things that we would not know. We would not even have the concept of the Messiah. And I've said it before. People want to throw the Talmud out, and the very fact that David comes from Ruth, and the Bible says a Moabite cannot come into the kingdom, cannot come into the congregation. That's like, boom. What can you do if you're word of God only, and you don't get the explanation of what happens out of the Talmud? You wouldn't even have it. You might as well just grab your Bible and start tearing out everything after the book of Judges. Or what? Yeah, basically, because you wouldn't have David. You wouldn't have Jesse, Obed, David. You wouldn't have any of these. You wouldn't have the Messiah. You wouldn't even have a concept of Messiah. So, and again, I've pointed this out many times to people, and this is where cognitive dissonance comes in, and anti-Semitism has creeped in. It's like, because the Talmud is those rabbis You know, it's like this hatred. You know, and I was telling somebody that people hate Jewish people just out of pure hatred.
Right.
And they're persecuted and killed just out of pure hatred. And I think it was it last week. And Christians basically are killed because they bring it onto themselves, for the most part.
Yeah, that's true.
Now that's a stark reality, and so, but anyway, the living water that comes from the rock, it was everywhere. You know, so the Messiah in John chapter 7 talks about rivers of living water. I have a book called The Secrets of the Mikvah by Rav Dobner Pinson. If you ever get the chance to read that, The Secrets of the Mikvah, excellent book. The Waters of Eden by Aryeh Kaplan, another excellent book talking about many references to living water. All right. Now, what I wanted to do was finish with Rabbi Trubman. And so here we have, we're talking about Miriam. All right, so he says here in the Orchard of Delights, Rabbi Trubman's book, Orchard of Delights, parenthetically, the general importance of self-nullification in obtaining Torah knowledge is emphasized by the following mathematical gem. All right, we talk about this here often. We forget about ourselves and we're looking to others. That's because that's what God does. All right, we're created in His image. And this is what we were made to do, was to bring others under the wings of the Shekinah. Now, the numerical value of the Hebrew word for Torah is 611. When multiplying 13 is the numerical value of the word echad. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad, one. All right? That's the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4. When you multiply 13 by 47, 47 is the numerical value of the word betul. Betul is the word for self-nullification. That comes up with, you total those together, you get 611, the Torah. This mathematical illusion mirrors the message of the verse. This is the Torah regarding a man who would die in a tent. True Torah knowledge is only achieved when an individual nullifies his ego in the face of God's essential oneness. Significantly, Rashi notes that both Aaron and Miriam, who pass away in this portion, die by way of the kiss of God, a process as gentle as removing a hair from a glass of milk. This image is certainly more comforting than that of a death as a jarring transition from the brilliance of life to a dark and eternal pit. In fact, virtually all recorded near-death experiences describe death as a beautiful experience full of compassion. Describing death as receiving a kiss from God would no doubt minimize our fear of death and the unknown. In truth, the more we learn about the Jewish understanding of death and the afterlife and integrate these ideas deep into our consciousness, the less we will fear death and the fuller life will be. Wow. You know, Judas identified the Messiah in the garden just before his arrest with a kiss. There are so many paradoxes in the Bible that are just amazing. So that why was the betrayal a kiss? And it just makes you think. It's just amazing to me. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine His countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May God turn His countenance toward you and grant you shalom, peace. Yeshua, Efo Haiti, Efo Haiti, Imlo Hailo Irotka, Yeshua, Kol ma shetov bi, Kol ma shetov bi, hu rak bizutcha. Yeshua, if